Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar. This is Derek from Alibaba Cloud Training and Certification Team. Today we are going to talk about the data integrations on the Alibaba Cloud Big Data Platform. This is a Big Data series webinar, and in the last one we have talked about the general usage of the traditional use of Hadoop and Alibaba Big Data Platform. And today we are going to start to work to build your project. And the first thing you need to do is to load your data onto the Big Data Platform. You can see the subtitle is from OSS and RDS to Max Compute. The detailed information of OSS and RDS is beyond the scope of this course, this webinar, and you may look up the information from alibabacloud.com for reference. But I will give you a short description of those components. So during the webinar, you can raise your questions anytime through the text box on the screen, and I will take care of the questions after the presentation. Okay, let's get started. There are four subjectives we want to discuss. The first one is the data integrations. And in this session, we will talk about how the data classified. We classify as the structured data and unstructured data. We actually have those data for experiment, for practice, and some data is stored in the relational database. It is structured data, so we use the RDS to store it. And the other is unstructured data. We are using some logs and stored on OSS components. And again, the OSS and RDS, you may not familiar with that. I will give you a short explanations later. And the second component is the Max Compute. That's the important part of this webinar because it is offline data processing engine. It is most important components in Alibaba Cloud. We will use these things to write some SQL statement to get our data we collected to get the result we want. And the third thing is the DataWorks. DataWorks is, you can consider it as the IDEs for Max Compute. We can, in the whole process, we actually not see the Max Compute directly. We just using the DataWorks to manipulate the Max Compute. And the next session we are going to demonstrate some demos, and we actually will see the whole process goes on Alibaba Cloud. It's pretty simple. Okay, let's go to the first session, the data integrations. It is about the general process of data integrations. So first thing we need to figure out is the data source and data type. And it is we have all of kind of data types from different data sources. So it is quite a big question in Big Data Platform. We have to deal all of the data type and data kinds. We use different kind of tools. Let's say in the open source ecosystem, we use actually some 5 or 3 tools to do the ETL things. Generally, we separated the data as the structured data. So we store it usually in the traditional relational database like Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, and PostgreSQL. And the other is some unstructured data like the text file, the pictures and the videos, audios you collected. And the last part is the semi-structured. It has some metadata to describe the definitions and the format of the data, like something like logs and the XML and the JSON file. And then we have the data integration components to do some data acquisitions, data transformations, governances. And today we're mainly focusing on the data integrations, how to do the collecting the data from different kind of tools with different data types. Here is our testing data. It is separate for two kinds of data types. In the left-hand side, we have some IP address database. It is mainly described. If you give it its IP address, I can tell which countries and which region and the latitude and longitude. These are the geography information. I can return that for you. So you can just give one of the IP address. I can return all of the informations in the left-hand side. It is you can see it is a data structure in a database. So it is a different kind of column with the data type. Like the first one, it is the IP start address, and the IP end address. It's with the integer data types. So that is structured data we can store it on the relational database. And the right-hand side, we have some logs. So these are typically the format of HTTP servers and NGINX servers. So you can actually see the first line, the first column is some sequence numbers, and second column is the IP address, and then some timestamp information, and then the some protocols and HTTP static codes. So about the log format information, we have another webinar or Clowder on our website to describe that. So you can take for reference, or you can also look up just Google the keywords like the NGINX log format and HTTP log format for the further details of the information. So from the log, we can see it is there's not a unified separator of each columns. So we need to use some technology about like the regular expressions. So that's we will talk about it in the following webinars. So please pay attention to our agenda. So the next thing, we already have those kind of data. So we need to decide how to do the integrations. So according those different kind of data, we have built some different the procedures to load the data. The first one is the offline data. This is just lying on your file system or on your database. We need to do the data source acquisitions, use different tools. We are going to use the data is stored in database, local file, or some objective shared storage like the OSS. And then we are doing the integrations and doing the data scrubbing. Some customer code are using SQL statement in our max compute. Then we comes the following procedures. We will hold several webinars to describe each component of the whole procedures. The first thing we need is to do the data integrations. And the second data type will be the streaming data. So the data is generally generating anytime, every time. So you need to catch up the change. That is a streaming data. We have some other procedures to deal with that and different components. The last one is the real time. It is for ad hoc queries. That is, you may get some insight in the data. You write down some circles, some select. It will return the result immediately. So that is a different kind of data processing procedures, where today we are only focusing on the offline data process, and in offline we are only focusing on the data integrations. So that is the offline data process. We have those architectures. It is kind of complicated. Let me introduce each components for you. At the bottom, we can see we have data source, like just now we have described from text file, Hive, it is the traditional Hadoop platform and some RDBMS. We have those data stored on different kind of storage. And we have some ECS servers. Those are like the x86 servers you have built on cloud. They install some Linux system. And you have built on the OSS and the MySQL database. The RDS is actually, you can consider it is a MySQL database on cloud. It is Alibaba's cloud Apsara database on cloud. And the OSS you can consider as the distributed file system. It can store some unstructured and semi-structured data on it. So we have our IP address database stored on RDS and the log data stored on OSS. Then we are going to do the integrations, load the two kinds of data into our Max Compute. So the procedure will simply, as I described just now, and the table store listed here is just to store the metadata of the Max Compute. The Max Compute, you can consider it as an offline data warehouse. It is, we also need to create some tables in it. So the metadata of a table is like the table name, how many columns, and the date type of each columns. So all those information are stored in the table store. It is also Alibaba's cloud products. So that's the procedures and the whole architectures of our project. And then we are going to introduce some concept of Max Compute because it is the most important part. Let's see the basic concept of Max Compute. It is about the project. Okay, let's now just demonstrate on the slides. I will go into the actual products in the website. So when you're navigate to Alibaba's cloud website, you can see the web page, and when you got your cloud account, you can log in the consoles. So this it will list all the components you have already purchased, and we can see some object storage service, like it is OSS. We have some log data stored on it. And the other is Apsara RDS. We store the IP address database on it. So what we are going to see is the Max Compute. So let's go into the Max Compute. So the first banner you will see DataWorks and Studio, data integrations, and Max Compute. So like just now I have described, when you enter the Max Compute to processing your data, so the first thing you need to do is the data integrations. And I also described that you cannot directly see the Max Compute. We manipulate the Max Compute using the DataWorks. It's like IDEs of Max Compute. If you consider the Max Compute as some programming language like Java, like Python, and DataWorks is like the integrated interface environment of the like Eclipse, like IntelliJ IDEA for your programming. So the first thing when you enter your Max Compute or DataWorks, you need to do is to create a project. So that's the first concept you need to know when you enter the Max Compute. So you can see I already have some project listing here. And when you have your own business, you need to create one of the projects. The first thing you need to do is to choose some regions like Hong Kong like some regions is near from you, very close to you. And we need to choose the max compute components and the charging method. If you like to have a try, you can choose the pay-as-you-go. It will not charge you if you don't use it. So it is based on the calculations. And the other important components is the data integrations. So we only have those two key components, and the others like the development and other components we will see later. Next step, you can see the project name. I will give it project name. So we can just create it. Already exists. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, maybe some other names I'll have already write down. Let's just using the existing project. This is okay. Let's go to the data integrations. So that's actually we are using. We can see that there's different components. I will describe later. So that's the first site. The first map we're using the max compute. So let's go back to the slides and continue with the concept. So this we already see the project actually in the max compute website, max compute console. And it is the most basic unit for resource isolations. So if the resource in like the tables, users, and security policies, the job resources in this project, you cannot escape into another project. So a project is similar to Oracle's database. Not just the Oracle, it's like a database concept in the traditional RDBMS. So the first thing you need to do in the database in Oracle or in MySQL maybe to create a database and then create some tables in it. So the table users are subordinate to a project, and other like authentications project you can do something else after you're creating a project. The end of the whole. The storage is a distributed file system. I will not go into the detailed informations. I just want to highlight the data is managed by Pangu storage system. You can, if you are familiar with the Hadoop ecosystem, you may consider it as the HDFS in Hadoop. And if you're not familiar with any of the distributed system, I suggest you to see the last webinar. It was already published on YouTube and somewhere else. You can just search. Those has some building life cycles and management policies. And it is support the storage, quota-based and multi-tenant management. So you can just just log on the storage, log on the max compute, and you can see, you can search or try some components on it. So this is actually the max compute architecture. At the bottom is the hardware servers, and it is have some Apsara distributed system. It's just like the Hadoop ecosystem. We have distributed file system, resource management system, and then we have the data processing engine like mass compute. And mass compute support the SQL statement and Java language and some graph calculations as a machine learning language. And we will discuss all of the components in the later webinars. So in mass compute, we have several kinds of clients. The DataWorks, we have already seen. Let's switch to the web page console. The DataWorks is one of the clients to manipulate or to write down some of your codes from to the Max Compute, and you can also to download some command line interface. Like you download some tools, it is called ODPS CMDs. And then you have connect using the configuration file to write down the information that you needed. So I don't want to show the details of the configurations. You may just check out on the official document. You can write down some command lines like show tables. And it will describe some, it will list some tables. And you can write down some SQL statement. Let's say IP underscore DB5. So it will actually execute the SQL statement. Because it is offline data processing engine, it will take some time to get you the response. The Max Compute is most like the Hive in Hadoop ecosystem. It can support the SQL statement and then change into the something like Max and Compute, Max Compute mode in the Hadoop ecosystem. It returns some result. You can see it just some like a SQL statement and describe the tables. You may see the table structures and the column informations. And the data sets, it also can show in describe command. And another tools in this command line consoles to connect to Max Compute is the Tunnel. You can use Tunnel to upload and download the data you want to. It is another data integration tools, but we don't want to use that. In today's webinar, we only to describe how to do it using the DataWorks integration. But there has another powerful tools for the command line interface. If you want to write down some script, you may take this for reference. Okay, let's go back to the slides. And the Tunnel command, I just show you. You can look up the detailed informations and to see how it is used. Just the command line, some parameters. It supports some concurrency is supported to improve some through output and some real-time upload mode. It is really powerful. So it is just some details of the command line when you are uploading some files into the partitional tables. And there are some information just for upload and download in Tunnel. So you can try it after this webinar. But we will demonstrate how to do it using the easy one in the DataWorks. Now here is some SQL statement when you are try to process the data later after the data integration components. So we will discuss this in the next webinar, but we will have just to highlight some key informations. So the Max Compute is offline data warehouse. It is built on distributed system, so it does not have those powerful key features in database, like does not support transactions, no primary keys, and does not support the update and delete commands. So just like in Hadoop Hive components, it also have those features. Does not support it when it is very common used in traditional relational database. So that's the key point you need to care about. So the other thing is the DataWorks is very complicated under the user interface. We do a lot of work for you to easy to use. So those are the components are, I don't want to go to the detailed informations. We will see it on the web page later on in the demonstrations. Okay, here we are going to do some demos to see how the real process goes. So because there is several sensitive informations in the configuration file, we just record it to using video. So this is DataWorks we have just to see. You can see some components on the top, like data integrations, data development, and data management, operating center, and project management. So those are actually the procedures when you're doing a project. The first thing you need to do is to collecting some data using the data integrations. So, and then using the data development tools to write down some SQL statement to process your data. Data management, the operating center to see some logs and how the whole process go. And the first thing we need to is the data integrations. The first thing we need to create some data source. And we already have two. We need to create a new one. Here are the data source we are supporting to. We can see some HDFS and the MySQL. So we already have our tables in MySQL. So we just integrate from MySQL database. We give it a name. The type is AliCloud RDS. Examples are RDS IDs. You can click the question mark to get the detailed information. Go to the RDS web page to get the instance IDs. Copy and go back to plus the RDS IDs. And the buyer's ID, you also need to get the information from the RDS main page. So that is the count IDs. You may copy and plus. Database name and the username, password are all the information you know when you are creating database in RDS. So we test the connectivities, we connect successfully. But sometimes when you are getting something wrong, it may be there's a security policy in RDS. It is in MySQL. So just that we go to the security components of RDS. And it has some wet list settings. So sometimes you need to add the IP address of the DataWorks export IP address. So that's in the document of the DataWorks. So it is kind of complicated. You can just play back to see the detailed information. So it have in different regions, we have some different export IP address for the DataWorks. So you need to add those IP address in the wet list of your RDS. So into the wet list and just plus those IP address. Because I already have those IPs, so it have duplicate IPs. So I just cancel it. And now we have complete of adding the data source. All the procedures seems okay. So the next thing is we want to collect some data from this data source. We go into the data development. We need to create a task. The task is to integrate the data from the data source we have just created. So you can see there are several data task type. We chose the data synchronized task and give it a name, synchronized from IP address from the RDS database. So it is for one-time run, not periodically to do the collection. Now we have some wizard mode. We can choose the data source. which table we want to collect it. So let's see some detailed information in the RDS database. We want using some MySQL client to see what actually we have in the RDS. So that is the MySQL Workbench, and on the left-hand side we have some like training data, and now we are executing some SQL statement to get the count number, the row number of the IP address. And then we have already have those two tables. We just choose one we want to integrate it, and using the data preview, if everything is all right, you can see some data from the data source. Next, we want to load the data into our Max Compute. There's another data source we need to add, is the Max Compute data source. So it is makes sense because it's a pipeline. You collect some data from somewhere and to somewhere, and the platform we want to move the data is the Max Compute. So there's another data source called Max Compute I have already added. So this is a SQL statement you want to create it in your Max Compute tables. It is not need to write down the SQL statement, it is generated for you. And it will have the map of each columns. It will separate the data and will map the columns into the data you have just created. There are some other options like concurrencies and operating rate. So you may choose according to your statement. Click Next. Okay, then the jobs is defined. Okay, so you may submit the jobs. There is a comments is showing that if you want to immediately execute the task, you may choose some data before today. We are choosing the data before the time before today, and it will run immediately. Okay, let's go to the operating center to see our jobs. So there are some other jobs we have already started. So this is the one waiting for running. It is our job just to have submit. It is running now, right? You can do some operations into the other jobs. Okay, let's just see the detail of the jobs. You can see the running logs and to monitor the whole process. So it is after some while it will generate the tables. So it is IP and score DB5. We have the data already stored on the Max Compute. So in Max Compute is also a table. So this is the whole process of the loading data from the RDS. It is structured data. So we want to give it a task to see if the integration process is okay. Let's just get the row numbers, how many lines in it, and compare to the result we just got from the MySQL database workbench. So we have 300 million lines, and we have the same number. So that the whole process is we're doing it correctly. So this is the whole process of the extracting data from the RDS data source. So the next one will be extract the unstructured data from the OSS to Max Compute. So we already have the first thing is also to create this source. We have OSS, and those are the information we need to fill in it in the OSS when you're creating your OSS. So we are going to the OSS main page to get those informations. So we actually have some buckets, endpoints informations. Copy, and give it a name. It is logs from OSS. And our endpoint, we have just to copy those informations in the OSS main page. The bucket name is a concept that belongs to the OSS. It is quick start. You can see, go back to the OSS main page, you can actually see the bucket name. It's called quick start Alibaba. Alibaba. So the access keys and IDs and access keys, you may take the informations in your account. So the access key I do not want to show, so I skip this step and just test the connectivities. So it is complete this source creating procedures. So then we have create another task to synchronize the data from the OSS to our Max Compute platform. So just the same procedures. Date synchronize job and one time running, give it a name. So create it, so it will go into another wizard. And also to do the choose the source, we may choose the OSS we have just created. And object prefix, you may just enter the file's name stored on OSS. So we have those files, just copy the file names into the wizard. So it is not actually the object prefix. You may just need to write down .txt's. Write down the column dilemmas. Just now we have see the logs. We do not have unified column dilemmas. So let's go back to C. Fetch 10 lines of the data. So it is separated. Some of the information are separated by the blank lines, and some of it are not. So we may write down some columns it does not have, so it will turn into one column called 0. So all of the information are one column. And the source, we want to load the data into Max Compute, so we need to choose the ODPS data source. So we just want to leave just one column for all of the data. And later on, we will use some regular expressions to separate those columns, like IP address, like timestamp. So that is a further data manipulations. So we will cover it in the following webinars. So for now, we just create one column. So we do not, if we just erase the actual informations. The failed mappings, we just map with the one columns and some other informations according to your network environment. Next. Okay, summarize and then save the task. And then you need to submit the task and to give it a test run. So it's actually to start the generating the integrations of the data from OSS to Max Compute. So it shows some data before now. If you run immediately, just the same procedures we have done just now. You can also see the logs. It takes some time to finish the jobs according to your file size you have just integrated. So go back to data development. We can see another tables have already generated, and preview the data. We have some log information in it. So that's the whole procedures, and we also want to check if we are doing the integration right. So we just using how many lines in our real data, so and check again in our Max Compute. So there's another tables we call t_log and raw. There's a size that this table have already taken and select all of the lines numbers in this table. So you can see it actually takes some time when you're doing the count. It's the whole Max Compute works in the data engines. So we can see this have the same numbers. So that means we're doing the whole process correctly. So this is the whole information we want to demonstrate. So to summarize, we only have we have the data. When we're starting a big data project, we have some data in different kinds of locations. Now in this webinar, we have two. One IP address is stored in RDS, and some other, like the log information, we have stored in the OSS. And we use the Max Compute DataWorks in data integration component to integrate it, to collect the data from those two kinds of data source. And we can see it is using some drag, didn't do much coding to simply collecting the data from those different kind of data source. So that's pretty much I want to say in this webinar. So, and then I will take care of some questions. So I will check for the questions. The first one will be, is this product suitable for individuals or just the enterprise? So it is, the pay-as-you-go mode is just a fit for the individuals to do some testings. And if you want to learn some machine learnings or some data scrubbing, you may take it, and you don't have the powerful machines, and you don't have the abilities to process so much large amount of data, then you may think of to load data on the cloud, and you're just focusing on the code and the business you want to achieve. You don't need to care about setting up the operating system and set up the whole distributed system like you do in Hadoop. So you does not need to be a infrastructure or the engineer. You're just focusing on your data analysis and machine learnings on this platform. So it is pretty suitable for the individuals. And in the enterprise, we have the same problem. We don't want to pay much attention to the cluster monitoring and operations, and pay many peoples to hire many peoples to just doing some other works you do not focus. You just leave on the cloud, leave it and the other things to the companies, to the cloud providers. So I think it is the most cost-effective way, I think. How much? The second question is, how much does the certification program for this topic cost? So in this webinar is, I think it is for free, but it is, we have other certification programs for the big data. It is generally, we have two kinds of certifications now. One is the ACA's associate, and the other is for professionals. We have, you may go into our website. I will show you. It is Alibaba Cloud. We have the support and training and certifications. You may take all of the informations you want to check out this website. Okay, I think that's all of the questions. And well, thanks again for joining this webinar, and hope you enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you very much.